She cuddles me like a teddy bear because this alien thinks I'm her comfort object. Unexpected roommates Marcus Chen stared at the assignment tablet in disbelief, reading the housing allocation 3 times before the reality sank in. After 2 years of blissful solitude in his private quarters aboard Research Station Meridian, he was getting a roommate. Not just any roommate, an alien roommate from the Zephyrian delegation. There has to be some mistake, he muttered, running fingers through his dark hair as he strode toward the administration office. The corridors of Meridian hummed with their usual activity. Researchers from a dozen species moving between laboratories. The soft blue glow of bioluminescent wall panels, providing gentle illumination, and the ever-present thrum of the stations. Massive engines maintaining their position at the edge of the neutral zone. Administrator Kelson looked up from her desk with tired eyes. Dr. Chen, I know what you're going to say, and I'm sorry. The Zephyrian delegation arrived with more members than expected, and we're at capacity. It's temporary just until we can arrange additional housing modules. How temporary? Marcus tried to keep the irritation from his voice. His quarters weren't just his living space. They were his sanctuary. After long days wrestling with interdimensional equations and quantum fluctuations, he needed solitude to decompress. 6 weeks, maybe 8. Kelson's apologetic smile didn't reach her eyes. Your new roommate is Dr. Nira Solith. She's actually your counterpart on the Zephyrian research team, quantum resonance specialist. You'll be working together anyway. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Working with aliens was one thing. Sharing his most private space was entirely another. Isn't there anywhere else? The guest quarters. Temporary housing pods, Dr. Chen. The Zephyrians specifically requested someone with compatible research interests. Dr. Solith apparently has some unique requirements that make standard temporary housing unsuitable. Kelson's voice carried a note of finality. Your quarters are configured for extended stays and have the environmental controls she needs. 2 hours later, Marcus stood outside. His own door, palm print authorizing entry to what was no longer entirely his domain. He'd spent the time frantically tidying, though his quarters had always been relatively neat. The main living area featured a small kitchenette, a workstation with multiple holographic displays, and a conversation area with 2 chairs flanking a low table. Through the bedroom doorway, his single bed looked suddenly very small and very alone. The door chimed softly, and Marcus's breath caught as it slid open. Dr. Nira Solith was nothing like he'd expected. Where most alien species he'd encountered were either imposing or diminutive, she stood at roughly his height, with a willowy grace that made her seem to flow rather than walk. Her skin held a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water, with delicate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Large, expressive eyes dominated her elegant features, their color shifting between deep violet and silver depending on the angle. Most striking was her hair, or what he assumed was hair, cascading in silver-white waves that seemed to move with their own subtle current. Dr. Chen, she said, and her voice carried harmonics that resonated somewhere deep in his chest. I hope my presence won't be too much of an intrusion. Marcus realized he'd been staring and quickly stepped aside. Please come in. I'm sorry, I've never worked this closely with a Zephyrian before. I hope the accommodations will be suitable. Nira entered with a fluid movement, her few belongings floating beside her in what appeared to be a localized gravity field. Your generosity is appreciated. I know this arrangement wasn't planned. She paused, seeming to sense something in the air. You're anxious about this. I can feel your emotional resonance. You can feel what I'm feeling. Marcus tried to keep his voice level, but the invasion of privacy made him distinctly uncomfortable. Zephyrians are naturally empathic. It's how we've survived as a species, by understanding the emotional needs of those around us. Nira's expression softened. I don't intrude intentionally, but proximity makes it unavoidable. I hope this won't make you too uncomfortable. Marcus watched as she moved through the space, her belongings settling themselves with practiced ease. She paused at the bedroom doorway, and he saw her slight frown. Is there a problem? He asked. The sleeping arrangements, Nira said carefully, on Zephyrian vessels. We share rest spaces as a matter of course. Physical proximity during sleep helps regulate our empathic abilities and ensures proper rest cycles. But I understand humans have different customs regarding closeness. The implications hit Marcus like a cold wave. You mean you need to sleep near someone, like in the same room, ideally? Yes, the emotional resonance is strongest during rest periods, and isolation causes significant distress for my species. Nira's cheeks showed a subtle darkening that might have been embarrassment. I can try to manage alone, but it may affect my work performance. Marcus stared at his single bed, then at Nira, then back at the bed. In all his preparations for working with alien species, nobody had mentioned anything about sleeping arrangements. The bed barely fit one person comfortably, and the idea of sharing it with this ethereal, empathic alien made his mind race in directions he didn't want to explore. "We'll figure something out," he said finally, hoping his voice sounded more confident. Then he felt, maybe we can adjust the furniture arrangement, set up some kind of partition. Nira's smile was gentle but knowing. "Marcus, may I call you Marcus? I can sense that the situation creates significant anxiety for you, but I promise for my species, physical proximity during rest is as natural and non-threatening as sharing air to breathe. It's not romantic or intimate in the way humans might interpret it. It's simply necessary." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced his nervous system would make the same distinction. "I'll do my best to accommodate your needs, Dr. Solith." "Nira, please. If we're to share living space, formality seems unnecessary." She moved closer, and Marcus caught a subtle scent like ozone and starlight. "I sense you're a kind person beneath your nervousness. This arrangement may prove more pleasant than either of us expects." As she began unpacking her belongings, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully ordered life was about to become infinitely more complicated. But watching Nira move through his space with such natural grace, he found himself curious rather than purely anxious. Whatever the next 6 weeks brought, it certainly wouldn't be boring. The first night would be the real test. Midnight confessions. Marcus lay rigid on the far edge of his bed, every muscle tense as he listened to Nira's soft breathing beside him. They'd managed to fashion a makeshift sleeping arrangement using extra blankets and pillows to create a barrier down the middle of the bed, but it felt inadequate given the alien woman's proximity. "You're not sleeping," Nira's voice came softly through the darkness, her tone carrying those same harmonic undertones that seemed to resonate in his bones. "I'm fine," Marcus whispered back, though his heart was racing and sleep felt impossible. "Your emotional resonance is keeping me awake," she admitted. "The anxiety, the hyper-awareness, it's like trying to rest next to an electrical storm." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm trying to relax, but this is just very different from what I'm used to." There was a soft rustling as Nira shifted, and Marcus caught a glimpse of her luminescent skin in the dim starlight filtering through the viewport. "May I ask you something personal, I suppose?" Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know what an empathic alien considered personal. "You've been alone for a long time, haven't you? Not just physically, but emotionally isolated." Her voice carried no judgment, only gentle curiosity. "The resonance patterns suggest someone who's built walls around themselves." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, surprised by how accurately she'd read him. "I find people complicated, messy. Science's cleaner equations have predictable outcomes. Energy patterns follow consistent rules." "But you're lonely," Nira said, and it wasn't a question. The directness of her observation hit something deep in Marcus's chest. "Sometimes," he admitted quietly, "but loneliness is easier to manage than disappointment." "What disappointed you so deeply?" Nira's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried such warmth that Marcus found himself wanting to answer. "I was engaged once," he said, staring at the ceiling. 3 years ago. Dr. Rebecca Voss, brilliant xenobiologist. We worked together, lived together, planned a future together, until she got offered a position on the Centauri expedition. Suddenly our shared dreams weren't as important as her career advancement. She chose her work over your relationship. She chose her work over me, Marcus corrected, the old pain still sharp. Said I was too focused on my research, too emotionally distant. Ironic, considering she was the one who left. Nira was quiet for several heartbeats. "Among my people, Emotional bonds are considered sacred. To deliberately sever such a connection, it's almost incomprehensible to us. What about you? Marcus found himself asking, have you ever been bonded to someone once? Nira's voice carried a note of sadness. Theron Velik, a researcher on my home world. We were empathically linked for 2 years, what you might call a romantic partnership, but he couldn't adapt to the intensity of the connection. He said feeling my emotions, as well as his own, was like drowning in sensation. So he left too. He requested an empathic dampening procedure. It severed our bond completely. I still feel the echo of that absence sometimes, like a phantom limb. Marcus turned his head to look at her, seeing the faint glow of her skin in the darkness. I'm sorry, that sounds incredibly painful. It was, Nira said simply. But it taught me that some connections are worth the risk of pain. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, and Marcus found his tension beginning to ease. There was something about Nira's presence now that he wasn't fighting it. That felt surprisingly calming. Marcus, Nira said eventually, would it help if I tried to regulate your emotional resonance? I can't read your thoughts, but I can help stabilize your anxiety. How would you do that? Physical contact helps focus the empathic connection. If you're comfortable with it, I could try to project calming influences. Marcus felt his pulse quicken again. What kind of physical contact? Nothing inappropriate. Nira assured him. Perhaps just, may I place my hand on your arm? After a moment's hesitation, Marcus nodded, then realized she might not be able to see the gesture. Okay. Nira's hand settled gently on his forearm, and Marcus was struck by how warm and soft her skin felt. Almost immediately, he felt a strange sense of calm washing over him, like sinking into a warm bath after a long day. Better? Nira asked. Much, Marcus admitted, surprised by how quickly the tension was leaving his muscles. That's actually incredible. How are you doing that? Empathic resonance works both ways. I can feel your emotions, but I can also project stability and calm. It's a survival mechanism helping pack members regulate during times of stress. Pack members, Zephyrians, are naturally communal. We form close-knit groups for emotional and physical support. The idea of sleeping alone every night it's actually quite frightening for us. Marcus found himself relaxing deeper into the mattress. Nira's touch and the strange calm she was projecting making him feel more at ease than he had in months. So this arrangement is actually harder on you than it is on me. Perhaps, Nira said softly, but I'm finding your presence more comforting than I expected. Even with all my emotional storms, especially because of them, Nira's voice carried a smile. Your emotions are complex, layered. Most humans I've encountered have relatively simple emotional patterns, but you feel things very deeply, even when you try to hide it. Is that good or bad? It's fascinating, Nira said, her thumb tracing a small circle on his arm. And attractive. Marcus felt his breath catch. Attractive? To an empath, emotional depth is appealing, like a rich, complex melody instead of a simple tune. Marcus turned onto his side to face her, and in the dim light he could see her watching him with those shifting violet silver eyes. Nira, I have to ask, is this normal? This level of connection on the first night? No, she admitted quietly. Usually it takes weeks to develop this kind of empathic rapport. But you, she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. You have a very resonant emotional signature. It's like you're naturally attuned to empathic frequencies. What does that mean? It means, Nira said, moving slightly closer, that this arrangement might be more significant than either of us anticipated. Marcus felt his heart rate increase again. But this time, it wasn't from anxiety. With Nira's calming influence flowing through their connection, he found himself hyper-aware of every detail, the way her silver hair caught the starlight, the soft rhythm of her breathing, the gentle warmth of her skin against his. Nira, he said quietly, I think I should warn you, I'm not very good at this kind of thing. Emotional connections, I mean. You're doing better than you think, she whispered, her hand sliding up to rest against his chest, just over his heart. Your emotional resonance is becoming more stable, more harmonious. Is that your doing or mine? Both, Nira said, and Marcus realized she'd moved close enough that he could feel her breath against his face. Empathic bonding is always mutual. Marcus felt something shifting between them. A connection that went beyond the physical touch, or even Nira's empathic abilities. For the first time in years, he felt truly understood, truly seen by another person. "This is dangerous," he whispered. "Why?" Nira's voice was barely audible. "Because I could get used to this, to feeling like I'm not alone. Would that be so terrible?" Marcus looked into her eyes, seeing something there that made his chest tighten. "With possibility, I suppose we'll find out." As they settled into sleep, still connected by touch and empathic resonance, Marcus realized that his carefully ordered life had indeed become more complicated. But for the first time, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow instead of just enduring it. Scientific Tension laboratory hummed with activity as Marcus and Nira worked side by side. Their research into interdimensional energy patterns taking on new urgency after yesterday's breakthrough. Marcus found himself stealing glances at his research partner as she manipulated the holographic displays with graceful precision, her movements creating ripples in the energy fields. They were studying. "The resonance frequency is stabilizing," Nira announced, her voice carrying excitement. "If we can maintain this pattern for another 60 seconds, we should be able to open a stable microportal." Marcus monitored the quantum fluctuations on his console, trying to ignore the way Nira's proximity affected his concentration. After 3 weeks of sharing quarters, he'd grown accustomed to her empathic presence, but being this close during their work created an entirely different kind of tension. "Frequency holding steady," he reported, then paused as an anomaly appeared on his readings. "Wait, we're getting interference from somewhere. The pattern's starting to destabilize." Before Nira could respond, the laboratory door hissed open and Dr. Harrison Wells strode in, his expression stern and his aide trailing behind with a data pad. Wells had been skeptical of the human-Zephyrian research partnership from the beginning, and his frequent interruptions had become increasingly disruptive. "Dr. Chen, Dr. Solith," Wells said curtly, his eyes moving between them with obvious disapproval. "I need to speak with you both about your recent research reports." "Dr. Wells, we're in the middle of a critical experiment," Marcus said, not taking his eyes off his readings. "Could this wait another few minutes?" "I'm afraid not." Wells moved closer to their workstation, and Marcus felt Nira tense beside him. "There are concerns about the nature of your collaboration." "What kind of concerns?" Nira asked, her harmonious voice carrying a subtle note of warning that Marcus had learned to recognize. "Your research productivity has increased dramatically since you began working together, but several colleagues have noticed irregularities in your methodology. Some are questioning whether Dr. Solith is using empathic influence to enhance the research process." Marcus felt his temper flare. "That's ridiculous. Our breakthrough came from combining quantum mechanics with Zephyrian empathic resonance theory. It's legitimate science, not some kind of mental manipulation." "Nevertheless," Wells continued, "the ethics committee has requested a full review of your work, and there are questions about your living arrangements as well." "Our living arrangements." Marcus could feel his heart rate increasing, and through their connection, he sensed Nira's own rising anger. It's unusual for research partners to share quarters, especially when one is an empath. Some wonder if your objectivity has been compromised. The energy field they'd been stabilizing suddenly spiked, alarms beginning to sound throughout the laboratory. Marcus quickly moved to shut down the experiment, but the damage was done. Weeks of careful calibration would need to be repeated. "Look what you've done," Marcus snapped at Wells. "That was 3 weeks of work you just destroyed." "Dr. Chen, I understand you're frustrated, but no, you don't understand," Nira interrupted, stepping forward with a fluid grace that somehow seemed threatening. "You don't understand our research, you don't understand our methods, and you certainly don't understand the significance of what we've discovered." Wells' aide shifted nervously as the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Marcus had never seen Nira truly angry before, and the effect was both beautiful and terrifying. "Dr. Solith, I'm simply following protocol." "You're following prejudice," Nira said coldly. "You're suspicious of empathic abilities because you fear what you can't control or understand. But our research could revolutionize interdimensional travel, and you're sabotaging it because of your own Insecurities. That's enough, Wells said sharply. Dr. Chen, I'm recommending that you be reassigned to a different project. Your objectivity has clearly been compromised. Over my dead body, Marcus said, moving to stand beside Nira. We're on the verge of a major breakthrough, and I won't let your prejudices destroy years of potential progress. Wells studied them both for a long moment, his expression calculating. Very well. You have 1 week to produce concrete results that justify the ethics committee's continued support. If you can't demonstrate significant progress, this partnership will be dissolved. After Wells and his aide left, Marcus sank into his chair, running his hands through his hair. I'm sorry, Nira. I should have defended our work more diplomatically. You were perfect, Nira said, moving to stand behind his chair. Most humans would have backed down rather than risk their careers. This is my career, Marcus said. This research, working with you, it's the most important thing I've ever done. Nira's hands settled on his shoulders, and Marcus felt the familiar warmth of her empathic touch. I can feel how much this means to you. The dedication, the passion. It's beautiful. Marcus leaned back against her touch, drawing comfort from her presence. We need to make this work, Nira. Not just for the research, but for us. Nira's voice carried a note of surprise. Marcus turned in his chair to face her, looking up into her shifting violet-silver eyes. You have to know by now that this has become about more than just scientific collaboration. I was hoping you'd realize that, Nira said softly, her hands sliding down to rest on his chest. But I wasn't sure if it was real attraction or just empathic resonance creating artificial feelings. Trust me, Marcus said, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. What I'm feeling for you is very real. Nira leaned into his touch, her skin warming under his palms. Then we'd better make sure our research succeeds. I have no intention of being separated from you after just 3 weeks. What do you propose? We work around the clock, Nira said, her expression determined. Pool all our knowledge, take calculated risks, and show them results they can't ignore. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for her fierce dedication. That could be dangerous. If we push the experiments too hard, we could damage the equipment. Or worse, then we'll be careful, Nira said, moving closer until she was standing between his knees. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. What? Among my people, when do individuals develop this level of empathic resonance? It's considered a sacred bond. Breaking it artificially, it can cause permanent psychological damage. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Are you saying we're bonded? I'm saying we're becoming bonded, Nira said carefully. The process takes time, but once it's complete, separation becomes extremely difficult. And you're okay with that? Nira's smile was radiant. Marcus, for the first time in my life, I've found someone whose emotional resonance matches mine perfectly. Someone who understands both my scientific mind and my empathic nature. Why would I want to fight that? Marcus pulled her down into his lap, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. Then we'd better make sure we succeed. I'm not losing you to bureaucratic prejudice. No. Nira agreed, her lips brushing against his ear. You're not. As they began planning their intensive research schedule, Marcus realized that the stakes had become much higher than scientific achievement. They were fighting for their future together, for the right to explore both interdimensional energy and the connection growing between them. The next week would determine everything. Emotional. Resonance is 72 hours into their intensive research push. Marcus and Nira had made incredible progress. The interdimensional portal they'd been trying to stabilize was now maintaining coherence for minutes at a time, and they were on the verge of achieving sustained dimensional bridging. Something that had eluded scientists for decades. Energy matrix is holding at 94% stability, Marcus announced, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. They'd been working nearly non-stop, grabbing only brief naps when the equipment needed recalibration. I'm reading dimensional barriers at their thinnest point yet, Nira added, her normally melodious voice showing strain. If we can increase the resonance frequency by just 3%, we should achieve full dimensional breach. Marcus reached for the frequency controls, but his hand was shaking from fatigue and too much caffeine. Nira, maybe we should rest for a few hours. We're both running on fumes. We can't stop now, Nira said. moving to stand beside him at the control console. "Wells' deadline is tomorrow morning, and we're so close." "I know," but Marcus was interrupted by an alarm blaring throughout the laboratory. The dimensional portal's energy matrix suddenly spiked to dangerous levels, readings climbing far beyond safe parameters. "Emergency shutdown," Marcus shouted, reaching for the abort controls, but as his fingers touched the console, a massive energy discharge erupted from the portal, sending him flying backward into the far wall. Pain exploded through his head as he struck the bulkhead, and his vision blurred as he slumped to the floor. Through the ringing in his ears, he could hear Nira calling his name, her voice filled with panic. "Marcus, Marcus, stay with me." Her hands were on his face, on his chest, checking for injuries. The energy discharge it's created some kind of dimensional instability. The portal is still active, but it's pulling in everything around it. Marcus tried to focus on her words, but his head was pounding, and his thoughts felt scattered. "The containment field, we need to." He attempted to sit up, but immediately felt dizzy and nauseous. "You have a severe concussion," Nira said, her empathic abilities allowing her to sense the extent of his injuries. "Your neural patterns are chaotic, and I'm detecting internal bleeding. Then you need to shut it down yourself," Marcus managed, fighting to stay conscious. "The emergency protocols are in the..." His vision started to tunnel, darkness creeping in from the edges. "No, Marcus, don't you dare lose consciousness on me," Nira said urgently. "I need you awake. I can't operate the human systems without you." But Marcus could feel himself slipping away, the combination of head trauma and shock overwhelming his system. Just as darkness was about to claim him completely, he felt Nira's hands on either side of his head, her skin suddenly blazing with intense warmth. "Forgive me," she whispered, "but this is the only way." Suddenly Marcus felt Nira's consciousness flooding into his mind, her empathic abilities creating a direct neural connection between them. The sensation was overwhelming. He could feel her emotions as if they were his own, her thoughts interweaving with his in ways he'd never imagined possible. "Stay with me." Her voice echoed in his mind, not heard but felt directly. "I'm going to stabilize your neural patterns, but I need you to guide me through the shutdown sequence." The pain in Marcus's head receded as Nira's presence seemed to shore up his failing consciousness. Through their connection, he could feel her, drawing his scattered thoughts back together, using her empathic abilities to keep his brain functioning despite the trauma. The red emergency panel. He thought back to her, amazed that she could hear his mental voice. Sequences 7 Alpha Dash for Dash 9. Through their shared connection, Marcus experienced Nira's movements as if they were his own. He felt her rushing to the emergency panel, felt her fingers entering the shutdown sequence, felt her terror as the portal continued to grow despite the protocols. "It's not working." Nira's mental voice was tight with fear. "The dimensional breach is too unstable. We need to reverse the resonance frequency manually." "Too dangerous," Marcus thought weakly. "If you get the calculations wrong, the portal could tear the station apart." "Then help me get them right," Nira replied. And Marcus felt her pulling more deeply on their connection, drawing on his knowledge and expertise through their empathic bond. The sensation was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. It was more intimate than physical touch, more complete than any conversation. He could feel Nira's brilliant mind working through the equations, but she was using his understanding of quantum mechanics as if it were her own knowledge. Together, they calculated the exact frequency needed to collapse the portal safely. Marcus provided the theoretical framework, while Nira's empathic senses allowed her to feel the dimensional barriers directly, giving them precise readings that no instrument could match. Now, they thought in unison, and Nira's hands moved across the controls with perfect precision. The portal collapsed with a thunderous implosion, the dangerous energies dissipating harmlessly into normal space. As the laboratory fell silent except for the gentle hum of normal systems, Marcus felt Nira's presence gradually withdrawing from his mind, leaving him feeling strangely empty and alone. "Marcus?" Nira's voice was soft and concerned as she knelt beside him again. "How do you feel?" "Like my brain has been turned inside out," he admitted, but he was surprised to find that the pain and dizziness were completely gone. "What did you do to me?" Emergency empathic healing, Nira said, looking exhausted. I used our bond to stabilize your neural patterns and accelerate your body's natural healing processes. But Marcus, the level of connection we just shared, No, Marcus said, sitting up carefully. I could feel everything you were feeling. Think your thoughts, a full empathic bond, Nira whispered. What just happened between us? That's the deepest level of connection possible between two minds. Among my people, it's considered the ultimate expression of love and trust. Marcus looked at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes, and we did it to save each other's lives. We did it because we're bonded, Nira corrected, permanently, completely bonded. Marcus, what we have now, there's no going back from this. Marcus reached out to touch her face, and the moment their skin made contact, he felt the echo of their mental connection. Not as overwhelming as before, but still there a constant awareness of her emotions and thoughts, just as she would always be aware of his. I don't want to go back, he said softly. Nira, what I felt when we were connected like that, I've never experienced anything so beautiful. Even though it means we can never truly be apart again, Nira asked. Even though you'll always feel my emotions, and I'll always know your thoughts. Especially because of that, Marcus said, pulling her down to kiss her deeply. The kiss was electric, amplified by their empathic connection, until it felt like their souls were touching. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Marcus smiled at her. Besides, we still have to face Wells tomorrow. I think we're going to need all the connection we can get. About that, Nira said, glancing at the data displays that had recorded their entire experiment. Marcus, look at what we accomplished. We didn't just create a stable portal, we achieved perfect dimensional bridging, using empathic resonance as a control mechanism. Marcus followed her gaze and felt his breath catch. The readings were unprecedented. They'd not only solved the original problem, but had discovered an entirely new approach to interdimensional travel. Wells isn't going to be able to argue with results like these, he said in amazement. No, Nira agreed, settling into his arms with a satisfied smile. He's not, and neither will anyone else who tries to separate us. As they held each other in the quiet laboratory, surrounded by the evidence of their breakthrough, Marcus realized that they'd accomplished something far more significant than scientific advancement. They'd found each other, bonded in the deepest way possible, and proven that love could transcend not just species barriers, but the very boundaries between minds and hearts. New Horizons. The conference room was packed with senior staff, representatives from both human and Zephyrian governments, and what seemed like half the scientific community. Marcus stood at the front of the room with Nira beside him, their research data displayed on the massive holographic screen. Behind them, Dr. Wells sat in the front row, his expression unreadable as he studied the unprecedented results they'd achieved. Administrator Kelson was present, along with several members of the ethics committee who had been so concerned about their collaboration. The implications of your breakthrough are staggering, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief science officer. Controlled interdimensional travel using empathic resonance as a stabilization mechanism could revolutionize space exploration. It's not just the practical applications, added Ambassador Thorne from the Zephyrian delegation. You've proven that human-Zephyrian scientific cooperation can achieve results that neither species could accomplish alone. Marcus felt Nira's hand slip into his, their bond allowing him to sense her nervous excitement. Through their connection, he could feel how important this moment was to her, not just professionally, but personally. Dr. Chen, Dr. Solith, Wells said, finally standing, I owe you both an apology. My concerns about your methods were based on prejudice and fear rather than scientific objectivity. Your results speak for themselves. Thank you, Dr. Wells, Marcus replied diplomatically, though he could feel Nira's amusement through their bond at his formal tone. However, Wells continued, this does raise new questions about the nature of empathic bonding and its potential applications. In scientific research, the level of mental synchronization you achieved during the emergency, that's not something that can be easily replicated or standardized because it requires a genuine emotional connection, Nira said, her voice carrying its characteristic harmonics. Empathic bonding can't be forced or artificially created. It develops naturally between compatible individuals. Which brings us to the personal aspect of this situation. Administrator Kelson interjected. We understand that you two have formed what Zephyrians call a permanent bond. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, uncertain where this was leading. That's correct. The empathic connection we developed during our research has evolved into something deeper. And you're both comfortable with the implications of this bond? Asked Dr. Vasquez. More than comfortable, Nira said firmly. Among my people, empathic bonding is considered the highest form of connection between two individuals. It's not entered into lightly, and it's not something that can be broken without severe psychological damage to both parties. Which is why, Administrator Kelson said with a smile, we're prepared to offer you both permanent positions here on Meridian, with joint research assignments and shared quarters. As a formally recognized partnership, Marcus felt a surge of relief and joy amplified by Nira's emotions flowing through their bond. You're offering us a permanent assignment together. More than that, Ambassador Thorne said. Standing gracefully, the Zephyrian High Council is proposing a new joint research initiative, with you two as the lead scientists, a fully funded, long-term project to explore the applications of empathic enhanced interdimensional research. It would mean setting up a new facility, Kelson added, designed specifically for human Zephyrian collaboration. You'd be the senior partners, with full autonomy over your research direction. Marcus looked at Nira, seeing his own excitement reflected in her shifting violet-silver eyes. Through their bond, he could feel her overwhelming happiness, tinged with a deep sense of rightness about their future together. There's one more thing, Dr. Wells said, his earlier hostility completely gone. The ethics committee has concluded that empathic bonding between research partners, when it occurs naturally, actually enhances rather than compromises scientific objectivity. You're not just colleagues anymore, you're pioneers in a new field of collaborative research. So what do you say? Kelson asked. Are you interested in building something entirely new together? Marcus squeezed Nira's hand, feeling her answer through their connection before she spoke. We're very interested, he said, but we have some conditions. Name them, Ambassador Thorne said. Complete research autonomy, Nira said. No interference from bureaucrats who don't understand our methods, access to resources from both human and Zephyrian science databases, Marcus added, and recognition that our bond is not just a research tool, but a personal relationship that deserves the same respect and protection as any marriage. Nira concluded. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Administrator Kelson smiled. I think we can arrange all of that. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the new research station they'd helped design, watching the stars wheel slowly past the massive viewport. The facility was a marvel of hybrid technology, incorporating both human engineering and Zephyrian biotechnology to create something entirely unique. The first test of the new portal system is scheduled for tomorrow, Nira said, joining him at the viewport. Even after all this time, her presence still made his heart skip a beat. Nervous? Marcus asked, sliding his arm around her waist. Excited, Nira corrected, leaning into his embrace. We've come so far from those first awkward nights sharing your tiny quarters. I don't know, Marcus said, nuzzling her neck and breathing in her unique scent. I kind of miss the intimacy of that small space. Our new quarters are hardly spacious. Nira laughed, the sound creating those harmonics that still sent shivers down his spine. No, but now we have a proper bed, Marcus said, turning her in his arms. And no more makeshift blanket barriers. I always thought that barrier was more psychological than physical, Nira said, her hands sliding up his chest. You were so determined to maintain your boundaries, and you were so patient with my human hang-ups about personal space, Marcus replied, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. I can't imagine my life without you now. You'll never have to, Nira said softly. Our bond is permanent, Marcus. Through this life and whatever comes after. Is that a Zephyrian belief? Marcus asked, curious about the spiritual aspects of their connection that he was still learning about. It's my belief, Nira said, standing on her toes to kiss him, that some connections transcend individual existence, that love, true love, creates something greater than the sum of its parts. As they kissed, Marcus felt the familiar electricity of their empathic bond, the way their emotions flowed together until it was impossible to tell where his feelings ended and hers began. It was still overwhelming sometimes, but now it felt like the most natural thing in the universe. "Come on," Nira said, taking his hand. "Let's go check on the portal calibrations one more time." "In a minute," Marcus said, pulling her back into his arms. "I want to savor this moment. Us here, building something incredible together." "We have built something incredible," Nira agreed, her eyes shining. "A partnership that's changed both our species' understanding of what's possible. A love that bridges worlds." "New Horizons," Marcus said, echoing the name they'd given their research station. "New Horizons." Nira agreed, and as they stood together watching the stars, Marcus knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, two minds, two hearts, one unbreakable bond stretching across the infinite possibilities of space and time. Their greatest discovery hadn't been interdimensional travel or empathic resonance technology. It had been each other and the proof that love could transcend any barrier, even the vast distances between stars. The end.